Since Arthur had not seen the painting properly and needed to see it again, he limped to the end of the corridor. But as far as he was sure, the flame would not hurt him. He waited for the flame to go out. When the flame went out, he looked at the painting from where he was standing, and what he saw was like this. A man who was lifting a heavy spherical stone up a relatively steep hill. This was the only painting that could be seen, and there was no sign of painting chains. Arthur looked around. In front of the painting, he found a piece of wood which was like a cane, and next to it was a spherical stone rubble. He had to find the shape of the code and put wood and stone together. The password was the stone climbing the slope. After some thought, Arthur began to chew the wood to split it into two pieces. That cane-like stick turned into two curved and flat parts. Arthur then placed the straight stick on the front wall of corridor, placed the stone on the left corner of the stick, the curved stick next to the stone, facing up to the right. It was at this moment that a square crack was created at the bottom of the wall where Arthur had placed the sticks and stone. But the wall did not break and did not fall down. Arthur stepped forward and poked at the cracked part, giving it a few blows. At this moment, the broken part detached from the wall and fell to the ground. Now the way was open and a red light can be seen from this opened way. Arthur stepped through the opening and took a few steps forward. This time, instead of facing a long and straight corridor, a different corridor was in front of Arthur. He went a few steps further and reached a crossroads. On the right side, there was a sloping path upwards, at the end of which was a wooden wall. On the left side, there was a long corridor with tall columns on both sides. Meanwhile, Arthur heard the sound of a baby crying in the corridor to his right. He was curious to see what was going on behind that wooden wall. When he moved to the corridor and went up a few steps, suddenly the sound of the baby cry stopped and the strong smell of blood filled Arthur's nostrils. Arthur was frightened. He pushed his ears back and slowly walked towards the wall. At the same time, the voice of a woman who had lost a child could be heard moaning and screaming. The woman was chattering to himself and saying, "You died in the devil's house. The devil's house killed you." As Arthur went higher up the slope and got closer to the wall, it was as if the sound of the woman was crying was getting farther and farther away. When Arthur reached the wall, he encountered a painting that read as follows. A number of columns were placed one behind the other with a short distance, and a man was making one of them fall on the second column. Also, there was a big ball on the last column. If that column fell, the big ball would probably move. Arthur looked around for something like rock or wood or anything related to the key, but there was nothing around. Because he had no time to waste, he started walking to see what was waiting for him at the end of this corridor. Arthur went down the slope and had not gone a few steps when he heard a sound like a wooden door breaking and something heavy falling behind him. He turned to see what happened. A large black orb was rapidly rolling down the slope, rapidly approaching Arthur. It was already a few steps past the T, and it was a big risk for him to go back to the previous corridor. Because if he did this, maybe the ball would crush him and kill him. So he ran away. Since his back was injured and he was in pain, he took the pain with all his might and ran fast. At this moment, the woman's laughter was heard. Then she said, "You will die in the house of devil." Arthur, who was running, heard this and his heart beat faster than before. Arthur was running next to one of the pillars of the corridor and saw a long stick. He made his way to the stick and quickly pulled it into his teeth to carry it with him, because it's possible that this wood is one of the keys. He was almost at the end of the corridor. He looked behind him and he saw that he was a few feet away from the stone ball. When he reached the end of the corridor, there was a painting on the wall. Also, the end of the corridor was an L to the left. Arthur should understand the concept of the painting in the shortest possible time, because if he moved too late, he would be crushed by that stone ball. Arthur only had a few seconds to figure out the key to the painting. The painting was like this: a pickaxe with one side of the blade broken and the intact blade facing right, as if the pickaxe was placed upside down on the remains of a cut tree trunk. Arthur tried to stick this painting to his mind. Meanwhile, the spherical stone arrived and Arthur immediately jumped to the left. The spherical ball sank halfway to the wall and stopped. This had caused the painting on the wall to be completely destroyed. If Arthur is unable to remember the picture of the painting, he will be stuck in the hut. Arthur was panting and was lying in the middle of the corridor, unable to move. He rested for a few minutes so that he could continue on his way. Then he got up, took a few deep breaths, picked up his stick and walked. Took few steps and reached the end of the corridor. A tall wooden door that looked like it had been burned stood out in front of Arthur. Arthur said to himself, a vertical line, a horizontal line to the right. Then he broke the wood with his teeth and placed them on the door, but nothing happened. It was at this moment that Arthur remembered that painting which a stone ball and a number of columns in a row was painted on the wooden door, exactly before the story of big stone ball that was rolling toward him. He who now had two sticks, one was short and the other was long. He took the longer stick and cut it in half, and placed one vertical stick and another vertical stick at a distance from it, and placed a horizontal stick at the bottom of the second stick. At that moment, there was a sound of breaking the door, and the door opened. Arthur passed through the door and looked around. The setting sun had lit up the cabin somewhat. This was where Arthur passed out and went into a coma. Arthur quickly ran out of the hut. He ran as fast as he could towards the house and never returned to the dark hut, even never looked at it. After Arthur left that hut, the incomplete shapes that were drawn on the door of the hut also mysteriously appeared. The distorted blank space in the figures of the first row was a cross, the top above which was broken. The second row of figures, the left of the circle, was an agricultural rake to the right, but the lower one of its three prongs was broken. Also, on the right side of the circle, there was a slope to the right, and there was a ball above it. And finally, in the figures of the third row, the fourth figure was a vertical line. And the last figure was an inverted pickaxe whose left blade was broken, as if these figures had written the words, "Death for Devil." Now, what do you think about this story? Tell me about your opinions. Also, stay tuned for the next stories. Take care.